Today, we are going to talk about perception. By perception, I mean the basic process of seeing, hearing, touching, and the feeling the world around you. When you look at this coffee cup, what actually happens? Most of us would give a very simple answer. We would say, light bounces off the cup, hits your eyes, your brain processes that information, and then you see the cup. This seems logical. It is the story that science tells us. But philosopher Merleau-Ponty says this story is completely wrong, or at least it misses the most important part. In his seminal work, Phenomenology of Perception, he argues that we are not just computers that receive data. We are not ghosts living inside mechanical bodies. Instead, he says that our body is the subject of perception. We do not just have a body, we are a body. And this body does not think in words or logic, it thinks in movements, habits, and direct contact with the world. Today, we will look at two big mistakes that philosophers and scientists have made about perception. Then we will see Merleau-Ponty's solution, the lived body. The first mistake is empiricism, the idea that we only feel sensations. This is the view of many scientists. Empiricists believe that perception is made of tiny, separate units called sensations. A sensation is a pure piece of data. For example, a spot of red color, a beep of sound, or a feeling of pressure. According to this view, your mind is like a bucket. The world pours sensations into the bucket, then your mind organizes these sensations to form objects. You see a red patch, a curved handle, and a white surface. Your brain connects these sensations, and finally you say, that is a coffee cup. Merleau-Ponty says this is wrong for two reasons. First, we never actually experience pure sensations. Try it right now. Look at the cup. Do you see a red patch and a white patch and a curved line? No. You see a cup. The redness is not a separate thing. The redness is the redness of the cup. The shape is not a line, it is the handle of the cup. The parts already have meaning, they already belong together. Second, sensations cannot explain how we see a unified object. Imagine three dots on a page. An empiricist would say your brain sees dot A, then dot B, then dot C, and then decides they are a triangle. But how does the brain know to group them together? It must already have an idea of a triangle. This means that the whole, the shape, comes before the parts, the dots. Perception is not a puzzle you solve, it is a direct grasp of a meaningful pattern. So he calls this a figure background structure. You always see something as a figure standing out against a background. You cannot see the figure without the background, and you cannot see a dot without already seeing it as either part of the figure or part of the background. The meaning is there from the very beginning. So empiricism fails because it tries to build meaning out of meaningless pieces. But you can never get meaning from non-meaning. The pieces are not really pieces, they are already soaked in meaning. The second mistake is called intellectualism, the idea that we judge, not see. This is the view of many rationalist philosophers like Kant. Intellectualists agree that we do not just receive sensations, but they say that perception is an act of judgment. When you see the cup, You're not just receiving data, you're also adding something. Your mind takes the raw, confusing sensations and organizes them using logical rules. In a way, you judge that there is a cup there. You interpret the signs. For example, when you see a distant car, it looks small, but you know that cars are not actually small. So your mind corrects the sensation. You judge that the car is far away. Merleau-Ponty thinks this is also wrong. It is wrong because it makes perception too intellectual. Think about a famous optical illusion. The Muller-Lyer illusion shows two lines of equal length. One line has arrowheads pointing out, the other has arrowheads pointing in. The first line looks longer, even though it is not. An intellectualist would say, my judgment is fooled by the arrows, but I know the lines are equal. But Merleau-Ponty says, do you really see them as equal? No, you see them as different. Your judgment knows the truth, but your eyes still see a difference. This shows that perception is not judgment. You cannot decide to see the lines as equal. Your perception has its own logic, a logic of the body that is different from the logic of mathematics or language. Perception is stubborn, it does not obey your thoughts. Also, intellectualism assumes that the world is always clear and determinate. If you see something blurry, an intellectualist would say you are not paying attention. But Merleau-Ponty argues that blurriness is a real phenomenon. Sometimes the world is genuinely ambiguous. Sometimes the outline of an object is fuzzy. That is not a failure of attention. That is how the world presents itself to a living body. So intellectualism fails because it turns perception into thinking. But perception does not think, it just sees. It lives in the world before thought begins. If empiricism and intellectualism are both wrong, what is the answer? Merleau-Ponty says we need a new starting point. We cannot start with sensations or judgments. We must start with the lived body. What is the lived body? It is not the body of biology class. It is not a collection of bones, muscles, and nerves. That is the objective body. That body exists for science. But the lived body is the body as you feel it from the inside. It is the body that gets hungry, that feels tired, that reaches for a cup without thinking. He uses evidence from people with brain injuries to prove his point. He discusses a famous patient named Schneider. Schneider had a small injury in the back of his head. He could not perform abstract movements. For example, if we asked him to point to his nose, he could not do it. But if a mosquito bit his nose, his hand would go directly to the spot. He could not point on command, but he could scratch a real itch. What does this tell us? It tells us that there are two kinds of movement. There is concrete movement and abstract movement. Concrete movement is movement in a real situation. When a mosquito bites you, you do not plan the movement. Your body just responds. The itch calls your hand. There is no gap between perception and action. Abstract movement is movement in an imaginary or symbolic situation. Pointing to your nose for no reason is an abstract movement. You are not scratching an itch, you are following a command. This requires you to see your body as an object in space. You have to think, my nose is there, my hand is there, I need to move my hand up. Schneider lost the ability to do abstract movements, but he could still do concrete movements. This proves that his problem was not a loss of sensation. His nerves worked fine. He could feel the mosquito. His problem was not a loss of intelligence. He understood the command, point to your nose. He just could not do it. The problem was that he lost the body schema. The body schema is one of the most important ideas in his book. The body schema is not a picture in your head, it is not a memory, it is a practical pre-conscious awareness of your body as a unified power for action. You do not need to look at your hand to know where it is. You just know. You do not need to measure the distance to the cup. Your arm just reaches out the right amount. This is the body schema at work. The body schema is dynamic, it changes. Think about a blind person using a white cane. At first, the cane is an object. The blind person has to think about holding it. But after practice, the cane disappears. It becomes part of the body schema. The blind person now feels the sidewalk through the tip of the cane. The cane is not an object anymore, it is a sensory organ. Or think about a musician playing a new instrument. At first, they have to look at the keys or the strings, but after practice, they do not look. The instrument becomes part of their body. They feel the music directly through the fingers. This is what Merleau-Ponty means by habit. Habit is not a mechanical reflex. It is not a stored memory in your brain. Habit is a body's ability to absorb a new meaning and make it its own. The body understands how to drive a car, how to type on a keyboard, or how to dance. But it understands this in its own language, the language of movement, posture, and balance. It does not translate the dance into words, it just dances. So, what is the big conclusion? The big conclusion is that we are not detached minds living inside robots. We are our bodies, and our bodies are not objects. They are the very means by which objects exist for us. The world is not a puzzle presented to a ghostly mind. The world is an invitation to action presented to a living body. When you see stairs, you do not calculate the height of each step. Your body already knows how to climb them. When you see a door, you do not measure its width. Your body already knows if you can get through. When you see a friend's face, you do not analyze the shape of their eyes and mouth. You directly see their smile or their sadness. Perception is not a process of decoding signs. It is a direct communion between your body and the world. Your body is made of the same stuff as the world. Merleau-Ponty later calls this the flesh. Your body is sensitive to the world because it is part of the world. This is why a baby can mimic your facial expression. The baby does not look in a mirror and compare. The baby feels the movement of your face in its own face. Your intention directly enters its body. Let's review what we learned today. First, empiricism is wrong. We never experience pure sensations. Perception always grasps meaningful wholes, not isolated pieces of data. Second, intellectualism is wrong. Perception is not an act of judgment, it is a direct bodily process that does not obey the rules of logic. Third, the solution is the lived body. The body is not an object, it is a subject of perception. Fourth, the body schema is our silent, practical knowledge of our body's position and power. It is dynamic. It can expand to include tools like a cane or instruments like a piano. Fifth, habit is bodily understanding. The body learns new meanings by incorporating them into its own style of movement. Sixth, the world is not a spectacle for a mind, it is a field of action for a body. Perception is a communion between the body and the world. Next time, we will explore what this means for our experience of space, time, and freedom. We will see that our body is not just the center of space, it is also the very fabric of time itself. But for now, remember this simple idea. You are your body, and your body knows more than your head can ever say. Trust your body. It has been navigating the world long before you learn to speak. Thank you.